Anyway, joining us now is Gerard Baker, editor-at-large of the Wall Street Journal. Gerard, thanks so much for coming on the U.S. Report. I wanted to get you on here because you have written a stupendous piece in the Wall Street Journal called The Reinvention of Kamala Harris, and you describe what you call Operation Transfiguration. And you say that this operation may be the most audacious plan a political party has ever undertaken. It requires effective deployment of the full toolkit of press and social media deception, selective editorial amnesia, gaslighting, and memory holding. Tell us about this program, and do you think it's going to work?
Well, thanks, James. Thanks very much for having me on, and thank you for your kind words about the column. Yeah, I mean, I think we are seeing something which I can't ever recall seeing before. Look, James, cast your mind back all the way back through history to about 6 weeks ago when people looked at Kamala Harris, according to all of the opinion polls. Many Democrats, by the way, huge numbers of Democrats, including some very influential Democrats, looked at Kamala Harris, frankly, as a political dud. You recall she ran for president in 2019 disastrously, didn't even manage to get to the first primaries of 2020, pulled out before that. She was then selected as vice president. She has no record of achievement as vice president whatsoever. She's famous, as we all know, and James, you've followed this on your show, for some utterly bizarre, bamboozling, weird kind of circumlocutions and really not for anything else. So this is what we all thought of her. This is what we were all told about her. This is what, by the way, many Democrats were saying about her because they were concerned. One of the reasons they were reluctant to get rid of Joe Biden was because they assumed that it would have to be Kamala Harris who would replace him. And they really didn't like the idea of that because they thought she was going to lose. And lo and behold, 6 weeks later, here we are. And we are now being told that Kamala Harris is, as I said in my column, far from being this sort of political loser that we all know her to be. She's this sort of reincarnation of a kind of holy trinity of Joan of Arc, Harriet Tubman, and Margaret Thatcher. It's astonishing, absurd though it may seem to those of us, James, who know a little bit, who followed this woman and followed American politics for a while. But so far, they seem to be able to pull this off. They've actually, with the support of, as I said in the column, of a completely kind of compliant press, which is doing all of the heavy lifting for them. They're going to try and protect her, make sure she doesn't actually have to speak to anybody, a live person, go around the country with her faithful teleprompter, just making prepared speeches and not actually reveal herself, to challenge herself to be in any difficult situation. So that's what I call Operation Transfiguration. And so far, the signs are pretty good that they can pull it off. After all, they've only got to do it for the next 3 months.
Well, that's the crazy thing to me here, and also seems to be how much the media seems to be very keen to participate in this, and they don't want to talk about anything on her record. There almost seemed to me, and I'd love to get your thoughts on this, it seems like they're trying to set up a new style of political campaign. I mean, campaigns have always been about vibe and energy as well as facts, but basically now saying it's almost policies don't matter, and it's about who makes you feel better and gets you on that kind of brainstem level rather than up in your frontal lobes where you think about what policies might actually come about if she was to become president.
I think that's very, very true, Jay. I think you have it exactly right. In fact, I would almost say, if I knew what the word meant, I would say that was very brat of you, because, of course, that's what we're being told. I still don't quite understand the term. Even though I have children, teenage daughters, I don't quite know what the term means. But you're absolutely right. This is a vacuous, vapid campaign that they're running, where they are trying at all costs to avoid any discussion of real issues, serious issues, for two good reasons. One, they know that Harris is associated with the Biden administration for the last 3.5 years, which is extremely unpopular, and all the policies associated with that administration, which have resulted in higher prices, open border, mass immigration, illegal immigration, global chaos, global insecurity. They don't want to have that discussion at all. They don't want Harris to be take any responsibility for the policies that she's actually been a part of for the last 3 years. And more importantly, they certainly don't want any discussion of things that she has, all the policies that she's espoused in the past before she even became vice president, all those things she campaigned on in 2019, all those things she said when she was a senator from California, when she was ranked, remember, by a sort of an official ranking agency, as it were, rating agency, as the most left-wing senator in a Senate that included Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren. So they don't want to have that conversation. Instead, they want it to be about vibes. They want it to be about excitement and memes and the laugh and the smile and the joy. I read so many articles today in the American press about she's bringing back the joy to American politics. That's literally, they want it to be an empty campaign. And look, they've got to, again, as I said at the start, they've got a chance of pulling this off, not only because we're 90 days away from the election. The next 2 weeks, 3 weeks are going to be more of this vibe stuff because, we've got the Tim Walz. You had a very good interview there with John Hinderaker explaining what Tim Walz really is, but you're not going to hear any of that in the next 2 weeks from the press. It's all going to be, the guy who stepped out of a normal Norman Rockwell painting and as Mr. Middle America. That's all going to be the celebration of him. And then we're going to have the convention in 2 weeks' time when it will all be, it'll be a huge party, a huge celebration of these vibes. And then we'll be at the end of the month, the beginning of September. Now it looks, as a result of what we heard from Trump today, that there will be debates. There will certainly be one, certainly at minimum, one on the 10th of September, and maybe that's where she will start to be challenged. But by that stage, we'll be less than 2 months away from the election. People will start voting. Remember, people's early voting here starts mid-September. They've got a pretty good chance, I think, of actually shepherding her carefully, protected by a phalanx of advisors and the media, getting her away from answering any difficult questions, talking about anything other than being brat and all these memes and everything else that we talk about. It is. You're absolutely right. It's an interesting new. But what they've done is, it will, if they pull it off, will be one of the most extraordinary achievements in political history. They'll have dumped a very unpopular president with 3 months to go, with no votes. Nobody got a vote. They replaced him with this candidate. Then they won't allow this candidate to be exposed to any scrutiny, and they're hoping that they'll get to the election. And partly thanks to the still remaining unpopularity of Donald Trump, again, they could pull it off.
Does Donald Trump, very quickly, and by the way, this is the first time in my life I've ever been called brat before, so thanks. We've had a real sort of history-making moment here on the program tonight, Gerard. But does, at a certain point, will American skepticism start to see through this? Will Donald Trump have an opportunity to cut through by just simply raising the question through social media, through whatever media he can get, and say, this person is not answering questions. They're in hiding. I'm doing press conferences. You need to be really skeptical about this, even if you don't like me as a person. It seems to me there's an American skepticism that Donald Trump can play off here.
So that's the other element of this operation, James, which again is why they are optimistic that they can pull it off. Because in order for that to happen, that would require Donald Trump to do something that would require the juxtaposition of two concepts that have never, ever, ever been placed together: Donald Trump and self-discipline. And that would require Donald Trump to prosecute a campaign effectively, challenging Kamala Harris on all the things we've talked about, the Biden administration's policies, her extreme radicalism, her and Tim Walz's extreme left-wing radicalism, really prosecute that case through debates, when he goes to speak at rallies, through his television appearances and interviews and all that kind of stuff. If he can do that, if he can be disciplined and focus on that, then yes, he can actually really challenge this campaign. But you're a keen observer of American politics, keen observer of Donald Trump. Can Donald Trump really be that disciplined? The Donald Trump we've seen in the last week has absolutely played by the Democratic Party's playbook. These sort of weird stuff about last week, focusing on whether or not Kamala Harris is black or not. More weird stuff at the weekend where he attacked a Republican governor. The governor of Georgia seemed to be more interested in attacking a fellow Republican than he was going after Kamala Harris. And then on the last couple of days, we had one of these Truth Social posts where he said that he expects Joe Biden to come back at the convention to try and steal the nomination and then debate him again. If he goes off on these Trumpian tangents like this, and we had a little bit more of that in his press conference today, then again, this operation to gently guide Kamala Harris scot-free to the finish line and win, then it'll work. If he can finally get a little bit of discipline, if he can finally be prevailed upon to really make the case against her on the grounds that we've talked about, then I think the weakness that the many weaknesses that Kamala Harris has will be exposed.